Attention startup leaders. Are you strapped for time but hungry for strategic insights? Introducing Managed Chaos, your go-to podcast for navigating the startup world in less time than your morning commute. Join us as we share expert advice, real-world examples, and actionable strategies to help you scale your business, allocate resources effectively, and achieve visionary results. Tune into Managed Chaos and join a community of like-minded innovators on the path to entrepreneurial success.
Do you want to get specific? Today, we're tackling real-life problems we've heard and giving you a free consultation for solutions. Send us your scaling business questions and we'll give you our answers on a future episode. Welcome to Managed Chaos Podcast, where we give you the startup business rundown in less time than it takes for you to get to work. I'm Katrina Purcell.
And I'm Rachel Anderson.
And today we're reading you a real-life problem from a business leader who may need to fire someone. Ooh, that's a tricky one. So before we get into the story, Rachel, how do you know when it's time to part ways with someone?
This is going to be a really tricky one. I think that there's a couple different ways that this could go. Because if I think really broadly about reasons that you part ways, it could be that it's not a good people say culture fit, but I'm even thinking about collaboration fit. Like, are the ways that you communicate to each other resonating? Can you see the vision? Are those kinds of, interactions melding? So I think it's okay to not be a good fit for everyone. That's why, the hiring process is so important. I also think that another reason to part ways with someone is that role is no longer necessary, which is a hard one, but maybe your business has outgrown it, or maybe you're going in a completely new direction where you don't have that thing anymore. And then, of course, for a performance issue, for whatever reason, they're not able to do the thing you need them to do. So I think in those scenarios, it's really different how you assess when you know it's time. But I think for me, in really broad strokes, not knowing the story yet, it would be about determining if you've been clear about the need, determining that you have been clear about their role in that need, and then making a decision based on if you, as the employer, have done the correct things that you need to do in order to see them succeed. And if all those things are sort of checked off, then it might be time for you to consider parting ways.
All right, so this is going to be a fun story.
Okay, I'm ready.
So your team has been collaborating with a contracted developer to build a highly anticipated new feature for your app. Throughout the project, the developer has consistently reassured you during weekly check-ins that everything is on track, and you have now planned your entire marketing and user outreach strategy around the scheduled launch date. But just a week before the launch, the developer drops a bombshell. They won't be able to deliver the feature as promised. And this sent the team into overdrive, trying to fix the situation, communicate changes to stakeholders. You'd already committed to a public launch, so you're having to decide what type of messaging. And after an exhausting scramble, you do manage to still roll out the feature. But it's late. And it's not without significant disruption to both the marketing efforts, the overall team morale, and user expectations. Afterwards, when you try to conduct a postmortem to understand what went wrong, the contracted developer refuses to take responsibility, claiming that they had communicated the risks and sort of accusing your team of needing a scapegoat. So you're left wondering, what do you do? So this is someone that you've contracted, right? So hopefully your SOW is ironclad, but that should be your first place to start.
That was going to be my first place to start.
How does that change your answer, or how does that add to your answer?
Yeah. Okay. So I was going to actually start with SOW. Like it should be very clear especially when you're hiring contractors, the outcomes should be very clear, and the method to which you're getting to the outcomes should also be very clear. And I don't think that smaller businesses sometimes think about both of those things as being necessary. So for example, just for clarity, I expect five different, mobile application screens, and we will check in once a week on a 30-minute call, and I expect Friday updates or whatever, right? So method to get there, and then also the outcomes. But assuming that you've done this, because that makes things really muddy. Like if you don't have it, then I hope you're clearly communicating in other ways and that that's been documented, which I would say is still like a necessary evil, even in all scenarios. Like so my memory is so bad. I usually tell people that report to me or that I collaborate with, if you haven't written it down, it doesn't exist. So even if we've like talked about it, unless it's in documentation, I guarantee you nothing about remembering. But I think this one is really tricky because there's kind of two different things at play. There's the pre and post attitude. And to me, that is almost a bigger issue than missing a deadline, because there's dozens of reasons that deadlines can get missed, especially when it comes to development of software and applications. There's bug testing, there's QA, there's all these different things that can impact that you don't really have control over. But the attitude and the responsibility of the people that are participating, to me, says a lot more about future work together, and the value of that work and the trust that you have in what they have to say. So if they're giving you regular updates that say everything's fine, and then at the last minute, suddenly not, I would have a lot of questions for them. Like, how are you measuring your own progress? What were your updates to us based on? How did we get here that we could avoid next time? If they don't have answers for that, for me, I don't think that they're a good fit, because I need to work with people who A, can be accountable to their own processes, but then B, are able to catalog their own process, because I want to know that you're thinking it through. And then afterwards, not taking responsibility, I think, is a big red flag. Even if my perspective, whatever it is like, I could not have done anything different and gotten us here. Which I feel like you could always do something different. But even if that was the case, I think that there is value in acknowledging fault and mistakes. When I manage teams, I talk about this a lot on other things that I do, but I have these team values that I've created because I have an expectation for how people conduct themselves. And there are 4 phrases that I use. It's, I'm sorry, I don't know, I made a mistake, I need help. And so to me, as a leader, if this person in a postmortem is not exercising any of those values, then they're not a person that is going to fit on my team and with the expectations that I have. And those values, might feel really feely or kind of emotional based, but it has a direct impact on the bottom line. It affects trust. Can I commit to partners that deadline? Can I tell other people that deadline? And am I going to get a quality piece of work? Or am I going to have any surprises? There's value to the business for you to be a person of integrity in that way. And so to me, that is the biggest piece of this, more than missing the deadline. It was the communication piece and then the lack of responsibility. So in this instance, I would say, yeah, it's time to part ways, and probably mutually so. I'd love to hear what this other person, the app developer, like, are they even happy doing this contract? Because
right. Well, and I think it goes back to something we discussed on another episode. So when you have a contractor or someone who's not a full-time employee who's owning something or is responsible for the delivery of something, you do run a risk that if it's not very well spelled out, or even if it is very well spelled out, that they don't have the same level of ownership over it and the success of it that someone who's on the team full-time might have. And, that depends on the contractor, right? There's different ways to contract developers. Some ways it makes it really seem like they are part of the team. And again, there's more open communication. I think in this story, the thing is that there was communication. And so I think that's part of it, is there's the obfuscation of the delayed deadline, right? And whether that was a self-preservation thing or a real true belief that the deadline would be hit, it leaves everyone kind of scrambling at the end, which is not ideal for a team player or someone that you would want to continue to do work with. So let's say you have to have this tough conversation, right, of holding the person accountable. How do you approach those types of conversations, especially when, the person seems to not be taking accountability or seems to at least feel that they've fulfilled their part? How do you approach that?
So I'm gonna answer this in two different ways. I'm gonna answer it in specific relation to this particular instance, and then I'm gonna soften it a little bit and widen that aperture. Because this developer is a contractor, and I am making an assumption that the completion of their contract was the delivery of the tool. And remind me, in the story, did they say that it did go live finally, right?
It did finally go live, but was buggy. Yeah.
Okay. So I think in this instance, there's a lot of states that have at-will hire and fire, which means you don't really have to justify. And especially with the contractor, you've completed the contract, all things. I think it is fine for you to, as the person that owns the contract, to simply say, we appreciate the work that you have done on this product. I think that at this point, we're looking for different ways to collaborate and move this product forward. And so we're going to call the end to, we're going to honor the contract and call the end to our engagement together. You'll receive your final payment on X date, and we really appreciate what you've done. There's no need to like hash out or put them down or whatever. You can just say, it's been fulfilled and we're going to walk away at this point. And then you can feel free to, pull that in-house if you have those resources, get a new person, whatever. Now that's going to feel really blunt to some people. So I'm going to widen the aperture a little bit and say, I think there's a kindness to being direct and simply calling it for what it is. If it's a little bit more complicated than that for whatever reason, etc., I think that it's okay to have a conversation with them. And I would probably not do this on email. Again, I would only recommend this if there's like some sort of personal connection or you feel like it's a little bit more complicated or whatever. But, I would probably get them on a phone call and say, listen, here's my perspective of what happened. These were the communication points. This is, every time it was okay. We missed our deadline. There wasn't responsibility taken in this meeting, and trust has been lost as a business in the ability for you to be a good fit for us. And I hate that it's true, but we're going to have to walk away. With that being true, here's what I'm still going to commit to you. I'm not going to leave you a negative review. I'm not going to badmouth you. I'm not going to, we're going to pay you out the full amount because you did the work. Right? Like, you can still be honorable while being honest and cut the tie. And I think that we sometimes look for the easy out by either not having that conversation or not sharing that honesty, or, just simply calling it like we're reducing headcount, or, you and I have seen a lot of our peer community and some of our ex teams and things have a lot of layoffs in the last, couple years, just the way the economy is. And I think that there's a way to do that with a lot of respect. And there's a way to do that where it's just kind of undervaluing the person and even their potential growth, right? I mean, this is not just about you being comfortable. This is about you acknowledging they're a human, and also that they have an expectation that they should be meeting. But I think, depending on the situation, you could just go perfectly like per contract, or you could say, this is really why, and this is the consequence or the outcome of this set of actions, regardless of if that story is true for you. It was true for us.
Yeah, I think also the other thing is that oftentimes and you mentioned this earlier, is the developer even enjoying the work they're doing, right? And so, oftentimes we think to ourselves, oh, I don't want to let this person go. They're going to be so upset. But in reality, maybe they're not the right fit anymore for the particular role or for whatever work that you need done. And you need to think also about the fact that you're keeping them from working on something that they might be more passionate or excited about. And I have seen that happen, for people in my circle who were laid off or experienced some type of job loss, and then are able to kind of turn it into something so much more amazing, right? Because they just needed to be sort of redirected. And so it's a good way to think about it, is that you're kind of opening this person up for other things that might be better aligned for them.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
All right. So we've now fired someone, our first time on Managed Chaos podcast. But this has been another really fun live episode. We would love to do more of these. So please reach out to us on LinkedIn, on our Instagram at Managed Chaos Podcast, or anywhere that you're listening to us, you can put a comment, give us your ideas, any kind of stories. We will change all identifying details, but that way you can get some free advice on your commute to work. So this has been another thrilling episode of Managed Chaos Podcast. We will see you guys again soon.
This was another informative episode of Managed Chaos, the podcast for startups. You can find us on all of your favorite podcasting apps, as well as on Instagram and YouTube, where we are at Managed Chaos Podcast. For additional resources or to continue the conversation, you can find Katrina Purcell and Rachel Anderson on LinkedIn.